I hope I'm wrong about everything I'm about to say. The upcoming 6th major installment of Ubisoft's Far Cry series is due out this October, and I'm a little worried. About what? Well, it's two main things, really. One, this Far Cry is looking incredibly bland. We've seen tropical environments in Far Cry before, and it's a bit disappointing we're not getting a more ambitious locale. Far Cry 4 and 5 took big strides in their open worlds, and it's just a shame we're getting what looks like Just Cause's leftovers. The weapons too look cartoonishly bad. A gun that shoots CDs?
Oh. That really hurt. Who throws a shoe? Honestly.
That saw blade gun from Far Cry New Dawn was one of the worst weapons in the game, and it looks like, unfortunately, they'll be doubling down on that design. There'll still be plenty of boomsticks by the look of it, but I'm just not really digging it. I mean, who's leading La Revolucion? Inspector Gadget? Now, the second thing, and this is where things get a bit more serious, is the story. Far Cry games have never been great narratives. They've done alright with their bad guys, but nothing earth-shattering. Voss from Far Cry 3 was definitely a standout. Everyone since then has lacked real punch. Pog and Min, Joseph Seed, they're okay, but the shadow of Voss looms large over the series. With 6, they've recruited the considerable talent of Giancarlo Esposito, so I'm holding out hope that he can give the series a villain that really is worth despising. But I have this funny feeling it isn't going to be what we expect, a straight-up underdog hero versus tin pot dictator story. I suspect we're going into much darker waters. You see, the game is only loosely based on the Cuban Revolution, but I have a funny feeling the writers aren't modeling El Presidente after actual dirtbag dictators like Fidel Castro or Hugo Chavez. No, my suspicion is Giancarlo's bad guy will be some kind of ultra right-wing nutcase, and Far Cry 6 will be all about dismantling his fascist regime. Oh, and you can count on hearing the word fascist a lot in cutscenes. You can take that to the bank. Far Cry 6's narrative director has come out and said the game will be political, and that's fine, totally fine, but that makes the political opinions of the team writing the game particularly relevant to what the final product might look like. We're already off to a bad start as the game's writers are out to romanticize the Latin American guerrilla, even having consulted actual guerrillas, and there's not a lot of folks from that group you could consider the good guys. Whether it's the Sandinistas, the Marxist guerrillas who overthrew the Nicaraguan government in the late 70s, or Castro's Cuban communist stormtroopers, it's a bit hard to find a guerrilla band to look up to. Seeing as how, once they get into power, they rule by force, jail people for speech, steal all the resources, and lord over everyone, Stalin style. But one person's terrorist is another's freedom fighter, right? And I get the feeling the writing team behind the game would agree. It seems they have more Che Guevara in mind than George Washington. Once again, they're the ones saying the game's political, so let's see what, if any, political opinions the writers have. Maybe that'll give us some insight into what the game will be like. First up is Nuha Al-Qadi, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, who tweets pretty much exclusively about Palestine. Now, I don't have any strong opinions about the whole Israel-Palestine situation, but there's one thing I do gotta call out here, and that she apparently supports Hamas. Just a week ago, she wrote, "Stop the Israel has the right to defend themselves BS. They are always starting violence. Palestinians have been using rocks, while the IDF has $3.8 billion in military funding from the US alone. Palestine only has Hamas, a resistance group, to defend themselves from the IDF."
Even the Israeli army admits the operation was complicated and well planned. The Israelis take their wounded to hospital. The army says at least 13 soldiers were injured in the attack. Israel has condemned Hamas for targeting the cargo crossing, saying it's jeopardizing the delivery of vital supplies into Gaza. Attacks on cargo terminals appear to be a new tactic by the Hamas military wing. 10 days ago, fighters launched an assault on a terminal where fuel is delivered to the Gaza Strip. 2 Israeli civilians working at the terminal were killed in that operation.
For anyone that's not super familiar with this stuff, Hamas is a terrorist organization that has carried out suicide attacks and killed civilians. These are not freedom fighters. I mean, just look at these guys. The guns and ski masks don't exactly scream, we're the good guys. Now, I'll say here that just because someone tweets something doesn't necessarily mean they'll let it affect their job. But can you really blame me when this person has never written for a major AAA game before and they tweet support for Hamas? Like, really? Like, there's no chance that this person could be influencing the story of the game based on that. Okay. And hey, if these people feel so strongly about sharing their opinions, shouldn't I be allowed to share mine? And personally, I have to say, I think radicals of any persuasion, they don't really have a place in the production of mass media. Let's do a little thought experiment. Think of any really political person you know. Do they ever stop trying to push their annoying opinions on you? Can we really trust this team of writers to not let their personal politics shape a game that has a heavy political element to it? We won't know until the game comes out, of course, so I'm reserving judgment. I'm just saying what I'm seeing here is not exactly encouraging. Moving on, we have Nikki Darrell, who strikes me more as your, more garden variety, leans left type of person. She doesn't have anything so spicy as supporting literal terrorists on her Twitter, but you get a sense reading some of her tweets. And she's got a particular perspective on the world. Last week, I taught my dad about they-them pronouns. He was confused, but trying. Tonight, he told me that playing Legion has helped him get used to because everything uses they-them when talking about operatives. Again, if you're like an activist or something, fine. If you got strong opinions, great. Just don't push them on me in a video game. I don't think that's too much to ask, I guess, but I'm afraid it might be, since if you read on, she's got gems like this. I'm so glad cartoons are getting gayer and gayer. Now, all other media, please. I'm not bringing this up for the first part of her tweet. I honestly, don't care how people want to live their lives, whatever makes you happy. That's totally up to you. It's totally fine. It's not, I don't have any opinion about that. But the second sentence is what's worrying me. All other media, please. That she's on the writing team for this game and thinks that media has to be a specific kind instead of just, open to whatever people are willing to pay money for, is, to use a word she's probably fond of, problematic. Then you have the typical ranting about Nazis, of which I'm sure the actual number of in the world today is below good Netflix live-action anime adaptations. So the people she imagines are Nazis are probably just people she doesn't like. Moving on, we've got Justin Cummings, who I'm more concerned about for his take on fandom and what audiences want. You see, he really likes The Last Jedi. Like, a lot. So much so, in fact, he admits he cried uncontrollably in the theater watching it. That movie's like a 6 out of 10 at best, but this guy has... he's worked himself up into thinking it's The Godfather. And here's why. Deconstruction. Anyone who enjoys pop culture should dread hearing this word. Let me just read you an excerpt. We were all unprepared, as filmgoers and fans, for The Last Jedi to shout in our faces that our heroes are flawed and human, that they will let us down, that we will fail, and that disappointment will follow us everywhere. We weren't ready for our fun space opera series to suggest that our broken systems need to be torn down, that innocent people will be hurt along the way, and that sometimes life is just cruel and capricious, and we won't be given any explanation of why. But then the film extends its hand, brings you into a tight embrace, and whispers that despite that, you will learn, you will heal, you will grow, and above all, that you matter. Regardless of where you came from, you matter, and you have a place in the story. Again, the issue is not his opinion of the movie, but that he thinks that this was actually a good way to tell a story. I mean, Luke going from hero to washed up loser was some bullshit, but hey, I'm not trying to get into a whole thing about The Last Jedi. Just saying there's a reason it's got such a low Rotten Tomatoes score, and it ain't because of review bombing. Personally, I prefer anyone who says Last Jedi is a great movie to be in a galaxy far, far away from the story of a game I might play, but that's just me. On Fandom, he has these worrisome thoughts to share. I wasn't excited for Solo, a Star Wars story. It's serving a different fan base, the guys on the other side of the aisle, the ones The Last Jedi left behind. As the origin story of cinema's most famous silver-tongued scoundrel, Solo is for those who never want Star Wars to change, who want to relive their nostalgic attachments again and again, forever, and who hated Rian Johnson's film because it was something other than a nakedly indulgent power fantasy aimed straight at them. Take it easy, buddy. Oh, he also thought that annoying robot in the movie was the best character, but that shouldn't really surprise anyone. Anyway, try and guess which way he leans politically. Yep, you guessed it. The tweets he writes himself are pretty harmless, but a lot of the stuff he shares is the same cookie cutter, look at me, I'm a millennial, I think capitalism is bad, sort of stuff. I also noticed none of them really post about games that much. They seem more like the Animal Crossing crowd than Doom Eternal, but that's okay. You just think, to write the story for like an open world action FPS, you'd play them, I guess. But I don't know, maybe they play them, they just don't like talking about it on Twitter. Totally possible. Okay, so then we have the big man himself, the lead writer, Naveed Kavari. In a recent statement about the game's politics, also, side note, we should be worried they're releasing a statement about the game's politics. That's not a good sign. He had this to say, and I'm going to read the full quote, so nobody can say, oh, you left out some, you selectively edited or for context or whatever. No, like here's his full quote. There are hard, relevant discussions in Far Cry 6 about the conditions that lead to the rise of fascism in a nation. Notice he didn't say communism, he's saying fascism, right? Popular word these days. The cost of imperialism, forced labor, the need for free and fair elections, LGBTQ plus rights, and more within the context of Yara, a fictional island in the Caribbean. My goal was to empower our team to be fearless in the story we were telling, and we worked incredibly hard to do this over the last 5 years. We also tried to be very careful about how we approached our inspirations, which include Cuba, but also other countries around the world that have experienced political revolutions in their histories. How careful were you when you hired a writing team that appear to all be radical political ideologues? These are the people that are going to deliver a great, thought-provoking story about revolution. Like they've been really reading their history books. My money is on just the opposite. I think they're going to inject their personal politics into the game's story. That's fine if you want to do that. Yeah, just don't be surprised when people don't like it because they disagree with you. Because, it's funny. Most people just really don't like being lectured or talked down to like they're idiots. It's crazy, I know, right? But we're not done with Kavari just yet. In an interview last year, he had this to say. I've been working on Far Cry 6 for about 4.5 years now. And from the beginning, really, we started from the point of revolution. What does it mean? What are the conditions that need to be met for a revolution to begin? And what does it mean to be pushed so far that you are willing to pick up a gun and fight? I think when you look at revolutions throughout history and around the world, you come across these similar themes of defiance of, systemic oppression. Okay, systemic oppression, he's using a lot of these words that are They're part of this, if you're talking about like Maoist China, pick up a history book and systemic oppression, read about like the Cubans taking over Cuba, the Castro and him implementing systemic oppression. No, systemic oppression is like a buzzword that activists today are using. So just pay attention when they use words like this. He goes on to say, and how far you're willing to go to push back against it. I'll be honest with you, it's been incredibly powerful, and this part's really important. I'll be honest with you, it's been incredibly powerful to be able to watch those themes come to the fore, especially in the last few months. Now, this is from about a year ago. Keep that in mind, it's going to be important. And I think for us, it was important when we were approaching the story to not be afraid to go there and tackle those themes. Okay. I think you're seeing it not just, in the United States, you're seeing it in Canada, you're seeing it in London. And I think what I hope is that for when our players play the game, they're going to see our narrative, paid honor to those themes, and then find some interesting takeaways from that. Okay, let's. So that interview was from a year ago. So he's talking about what was happening last year.
Is one of multiple locations that have been burning in Kenosha, Wisconsin.
I want to be clear in how I characterize this. This is mostly a protest. It is not generally speaking unruly, but fires have been started.
The building's beginning to collapse. The building is collapsing. The building just exploded. Oh my God.
Oh, right. That. Yeah. Okay, great. In so many words, the lead narrative designer has come out and said the inspiration for the game comes from some of the worst rioting this country has ever seen. $2 billion in damage, 20 people killed, something like that, and zero progress made. Boy, I just can't wait to play this game. I should also point out that if your position is supported by every major tech company, every bank, every corporation, yeah, you're not a revolutionary. You probably saw this coming, but his Twitter is, it's kind of predictable. It sort of fits in with this theme. But he doesn't seem to have a real axe to grind about politics, I will say. But his posts do fit in with the team that he's hired. It makes you wonder what his true intentions are. And if they wanted to have true diversity on this team, why isn't there a conservative person? Or maybe one of them is, or very secretly. How exclusionary is that? Okay, so I've done a lot of speculating here. So I will say, by way of closing, I don't know what is in the hearts of these individuals. Never met them. I don't know any of these people. Just going off what they've said on Twitter, or things they've written. It's possible they all seem to have very similar opinions, and maybe they won't end up influencing the game. Maybe these guys are just going to play it straight. They're great writers, they're great dramatists. They really get it. They understand how to tell a good story. Maybe that's all the game's going to be about. Okay, great. That's best outcome, I think. They absolutely deserve the benefit of the doubt, and I'm not trying to say I disagree with their opinions. This is not about what I think of their opinions. I'm only trying to share my concern about some of the statements they've made, what impact that could have on the final product. So, if you don't like or support, some of the stuff that they're saying, and you're worried that maybe that it's going to have an effect on the game, this is your heads up to skip this game. Now, like I said in the beginning, I hope I'm wrong about all of this, but there's something we haven't talked about yet that I think is definitely at play, and it's the abuse allegations at Ubisoft. So if you haven't been paying attention, there's been this whole scandal. There's been tons of harassment, and it's pretty bad. It looks really bad. To downplay that and try to move on, I think, of course, they would bring in some consultants to help right the ship. But what they have probably done is hire activists who told them spelling women with an X is more inclusive or something, and will help atone for the company's sins. It's no wonder they used the female avatar for the trailer, even though you can play with a male avatar if you choose. So I guess I guess that means true equality means just erasing the men. But whether you're trying to sell shaving cream or shoelaces, there seems to be one abiding truth. There's not much of a market for the woke stuff. I mean, just look at Batwoman's ratings. You know, even the people who push for more of this stuff in culture, they don't even consume it. The Oscar had its worst rating in years, professional sports are on life support, and Gillette lost $8 billion in value after posting the ad. You know the ad I'm talking about.
Bullying.
The Me Too movement against sexual harassment.
Masculinity.
I just hope that Ubisoft isn't going to go all Last of Us Part 2 on us and hit us with a game full of Tumblr-worthy content. Alright, but hey, again, maybe I'm totally wrong. You let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed this little video, this little talk, definitely give a like, definitely subscribe. And let me just say, I don't really make a lot of content like this. If you check out my channel, there's not really a lot of this coverage of these kinds of subjects. I just felt that this one, after looking into it, I felt it was important to share my perspective. Because I really like the Far Cry series, and I do hope it's good. I really hope it's good. Really hope I'm wrong about everything. But I think it's fair to point out, if it's a political game and these are the people working on it and they have, some opinions that might, maybe would affect whether or not you would buy this game. I think it's fair to talk about it. I'm not trying to put anybody on blast, but this is something that I would want to know about this game if I weren't making YouTube videos about games. Anyway, tell me what you think in the comments, and I'll definitely be playing the game myself to see what it's like. All right, until next time, game on.
The children of the